Hi guys, welcome back to Glittery Crystals. I am so excited to upload this video. I've been wanting to do this beer tumbler for the longest. I know that it's at its highest peak right now. Everyone is doing the Chamoy beer bottle, beer can, and I didn't want to be left behind. It actually took me quite a few tries. You will see it in a moment. It actually took me quite a few tries, and I have finished making this cup for the past month or so. But I've been so busy, I just didn't have the time to upload. But I'm excited that it's finally completed. You can see my process. I've seen these beer tumblers, um, but I've noticed that most of the girls that do it, or most of the people that do it, they use sublimation. And since I don't have any of the sublimating materials, I decided to do it via WATERSLIDE. And let me just say that it was a long process, but I'm excited. I'm excited so I can show you where I made my mistakes and you can learn from that. Let's get started, guys. So let's get started. I prepped my tumbler. I used this white gloss new can to coat my tumbler. Somehow, I really don't know what happened, but somehow the paint was feeling grainy on the tumbler. But I decided to risk the tumbler and continue with the process, which was a big no. But anyways, you can see here I use the semi-gloss clear coat enamel. This is the water slide that I am going to be using. I printed this image online. I just went online, I searched Modelo beer, SVG, and this is what came up. I did not buy the file. There's files that you can purchase on Etsy, but I was able to find this file online for free. So as you can see, the water slide almost touches the edge. There's still a small gap, but we will fix that in a moment when we get to that point. I am cutting off that extra clear edging, and once I have done that, I will submerge the water slide in water. I did let it sit for about a minute or two until the backing was peeling off by itself. But you're just gonna put it in the water and let it sit for a few minutes. Once that the water slide was ready, I grabbed my tumbler. I did add a lot of water to it, and I just applied my water slide. I am speeding up the process because this is the first try and there's a few more coming. So as you can see, the water slide was perfect. It glided like butter on my tumbler. I love the water slide, and I just moved it around. I tried my best to make the ends meet. I knew that they weren't gonna touch because there was this gap in between, but I wanted the edges to match the lines. I wanted them to be the same height. So I just went back, I lifted my water slide, I added more water, and I tried moving it around. Do not be afraid. If you're messing up with your water slide and it's just moving around, remove the entire water slide, get your tumbler wet again, and reapply your water slide. You will not damage that water slide. Just be careful with the ink. You don't want to smear it or you don't want to stretch it so much, but nothing will go wrong. This was a perfect water slide, but I had to ruin this cup with the spray paint that I used. After the water slide was applied, I used a dry napkin and pat it down to get rid of that excess water underneath the water slide. You want to do this step every now and then, every few minutes, because the water will start to drip out of underneath the water slide. Since you know that was a fail, the water slide just lifted from the can. It was a hot mess. I wish I would have taken a picture of the grainy of the spray paint, but basically the water slide just lifted as if it was oil and water. It just lifted from the tumbler, and there was no way back. I put that tumbler on the side. I decided to go with a 20-ounce tumbler. I used the same brand. I used a different can, glossy as well. And you can see here that the tumbler is perfect. It's very smooth. Now, you might be asking yourself, what's the issue with this one? Well, the issue is the water slide. I decided to change the water slide paper from a different one. That was not the issue. As you can see, the water slide is adhering to the cup very easily. I was so excited. I was seeing that it was perfect, except that the can that I used to seal my water slide, it was defective. The water slide did not get that perfect seal. So most of the ink, as you can see here, is going to lift off from the paper. It was a bummer because I was so excited. Everything was working perfectly. And as you can see, most of that ink is lifting from the water slide. So guess what? I decided to print for the third time the water slide with the same paper as the second try, except this time I did use a new can of the sealer. I applied 3 coats, and guess what? Yes, we had another small issue. Since I didn't want to make the same mistake as the second try, I added very heavy coats of the sealer. So what ended up happening is that some of that sealer dripped on the bottom of the backing of the paper. So somehow those drips made the water slide paper kind of stick to the backing of the paper. So you can see here, there's a few spots on the water slide on the backing of it. And those white spots are actually the damages that the water slide had. But I'm trying my best to remove the backing because it was not lifting at all. I was having an issue gliding the water slide to the tumbler, which this step is fairly easy. It doesn't, as you can see with the other clips, this part was not an issue, but at this point, I did not know what was actually wrong with the water slide. I was trying to figure out, but then this is the part when I noticed that there was something wrong with the water slide itself. As you can see here, these are the clear spots. There was 2, they're actually quite big. So what I ended up doing was peeling back the water slide. I'm being extra careful. But I was mad. I was mad because this was my third try. Like this cup did give me a big headache. But I just decided to pull the water slide gently, and that fixed the problem. There was no issue with the water slide at all. It was folding, but I made it work. I was not going to give up. I was so close to just giving up on this cup, but I said, no, I know there's girls out there that are in my same position that want to do a cup like this. They don't have the sublimation supplies to sublimate a cup and want to try a beer tumbler. And I just decided to fix the issues and try and finish this cup. So right here, I'm just trying to lay the image as flat as possible. And what I am going to end up doing is trimming the extra the extra piece of water slide. I'm just making sure that everything is perfectly spread throughout the cup. And I'm in love with the size of this one. It actually covered from top to bottom. So as you can see here, I am just gonna grab my scissors and I'm gonna trim off that extra piece of water slide. And the way that I'm gonna cover it is by adding that very long drip of chamoy. If you have an issue with the image, just cover it up. Chamoy is like the makeup for us. We're gonna use chamoy to cover up any blemishes. So once you're done fixing the image, I am gonna go back and pat it with a napkin and I am going to let it dry. But look at this beauty. I love it. I'm so happy. I'm smiling. I'm excited. I'm excited to see if it actually works. But I'm coming back and forth every few minutes to just wipe down or pat down the extra water that's dripping from the water image. And this is how it looks, girls. I love it. I should say guys. I shouldn't say girls. I know there's guys that do tumblers. Shouldn't discriminate. So this is how it looks. I love it. The third try, it took me 3 tries to actually make this image work. It's not as perfect as I would have wanted it, but you know what? I love it. It's my kind of perfect. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm in love. I'm in love. So I'm just applying a thin coat of epoxy and I will let it cure. So now that my epoxy has cured, we will work on the chamoy. Yes, I also had an issue with my chamoy. This was a trial and error kind of tumbler. I added the nice and thick powder from CCDIY. I will link all the products that I use on the description down below. And I was in a rush. I left my cup here in the Glittery Crystals studio and I had to leave. It was actually around 10 p.m. when I was doing this step and I needed to hurry up because I had to get home. Yes. So I added some of that powder. I added some alcohol ink to color or tint the epoxy. I will show you in a second the colors that I ended up using for this drip. And I was liking the color. You can go as dark or as light as you wish. There's girls that do it differently. These are the 2 alcohol inks that I ended up using. I did not use the orange one that's on the back. At this point, it took a few minutes. The epoxy was not getting thick. I'm guessing the temperature had to do something with it. I was actually, whoops. This video is just a mess, as you can see. But let's get moving. It was a small spill. We catched it on time. But as I was saying, the temperature of the place was around 65, 67. I'm not sure if that had something to do with it. I tried the CCDIY artisan epoxy. I will leave the link down below. This was the first try. This was the first time me trying the epoxy. I don't know if that was the issue or not. After the epoxy had that thicker consistency, it was not as thick as I really wanted it. But once it starts to get thick, I added the tajin. As you can see, I am using tajin, a very small bottle. But whatever powder or whatever edible powder or seasoning you add to your epoxy, please make sure to not take it back to your kitchen. This tajin stays in my craft room and it will not be consumed. You cannot consume any of these products after you have used them for crafts. So I am mixing, I am adding as I go. After I had added the chamoy drips to my tumbler, that's when basically I see if I need a little bit more tajin or if it's perfect as it is. As you can see here, my tumbler is ready to go. And this is how thick it's getting. It is getting thicker, but at this point, about 30-40 minutes has passed. I'm very, excuse me. I am very, oh my goodness. I am getting very anxious to just finish the cup because I just had to leave. But yes, it is getting pretty thick. So the technique that I use is smear some on the side and see how fast the drip is actually pushing down or being pulled down by gravity. And this is what I do. I put my cup back in the turner and I just spread a line of my epoxy. So the cup turner is actually going to help you move your cup around. In the meantime, you're adding that chamoy. And do it as quickly or as slowly as you want. Nothing is going to happen at this point. So don't worry. Do not be afraid that the chamoy is gonna slide off or mess your cup. It's not. It's gonna stay in the same place. Especially that the epoxy it's getting thicker. I used Pro Marine epoxy for the tumbler. That's the brand that I've used since day one, and I love it. And at this point, I was kind of regretting not using Pro Marine because I know how it works. I know that it does work fine with a cooler temperature, and the CC DIY, I'm still trying it out. So as you can see here, once I have finished applying the epoxy, the rim, I am going to get the tumbler out of the turner and just let gravity pull that epoxy down. It only takes a few seconds, so every few seconds, move the cup around, flip it over. Right now, I am adding a big chunk of epoxy to kind of drip all the way to the bottom where I want the seam of the water slide to be covered. If this would have been the chamoy, the consistency, the thickness, that if this would have been the end result, I would have loved it. I would have loved it so much. But it does thin out as time goes by. So as you can see here, I am adding more chamoy because the rim is getting a bit translucent and I did want it to have that thick coating of chamoy. And again, just flip the cup over. So every now and then, flip the cup. I'm trying to capture the angles. And then flip it over. This is how it looks from the side. You can see that it's dripping. At this point, the epoxy is still very manageable. You get to decide how far you want the drips to go. If you're seeing that the drips are just exceeding the limit, or you want it to kind of slow down, remove some of that excess. So as you can see right here, there's a big chunk that was actually going to fall over. That's the point. That's my cue to flip the cup over. And I'm just speeding up the process for you to see how mesmerizing that epoxy is. I love to watch this clip. Once your drip has fully cured, make sure to add a second layer of epoxy. Just add a very thin layer of epoxy to cover the entire cup, including the chamoy, the drip. That way you make sure that the drips don't actually crack or just break off from the tumbler. That's personal preference. If you want to avoid that step, it's up to you. But I did add a very thin coat of epoxy to just secure that in place. So yes, this is the end result. At the end, I have learned from my mistakes and I know what to expect whenever I do a second one. I actually loved the end result. I I'm motivating you to try it. It is a big seller right now. I've seen it everywhere. Every girl is trying it out with different beer images. And at the end, I just wanted to add that lemon slice. We are selling that lemon slice in our website, but it's selling pretty quickly. So go get yours before they're sold out. I will not be restocking this item after they sell out. So, yes, I hope you loved this crazy video. It was a challenge for me, but I loved it. I'm very happy I did accomplish it, and I hope to see your images as well. All right, guys, take care, and we will see you on our next video. Bye bye.